You'll be very pleased to know that I'm not going to take half an hour, and that's actually personal because we've got to catch a ferry. So, I shall be fairly strict with myself, I hope. In your pack, there's the shale gas production in England, which was a report done by MEDACT. There's a summary of the called Onshore Oil and Gas Water Waste, of really what the presentation is going to do, and there's a leaflet about fracking. So, is everyone aware of what onshore oil and gas involves? Yes, no? Yes, you do? No, you don't? Okay, am I in the way? Right. I've put together a presentation. I won't do the whole of it, but I will send it round. Okay? John Busby is an engineer who wasn't able to join us this week, but is an engineer who's sent and been concentrating on following wastewater from fracking. Ian Fairlie is well known for his radiation work, and he's usually come to this conference, but he's gone to France. Colin Mackie was the radioactive waste lead at the Department of Environment and Climate Change before it got changed, and then I did some work because we have fracking in our area. So it's here, is it? Okay. So I'm going to just give you the first few slides, and then I'll refer you to the literature. So what I've done the bits on onshore oil and gas, Ian's done the bits on radioactivity, and John's done the bits on wastewater, and then we've all done a bit on gaps. So you'll be interested to know that it's only England that is doing onshore oil and gas. Northern Ireland has an arrangement for not doing it. Scotland hasn't got a ban, according to the Scottish National Parliament, but they were challenged in the courts by INEOS, one of the oil gas producers. The man who leads that, Jim, got an MBE or a GOM recently. Scotland undertook a 2-year consultation, and they had at least 40,000 responses, and they're moving towards not having fracking. I'll come on to that in a minute. And Wales also has slightly less strong, but an agreement that it has to be looked at before any agreements are. So it's only England that is going to underpin future oil and gas onshore developments. This is the oil that's tricky to get at. Okay, we've had oil in the North Sea. I'll come on to that. Right. So the technique just involves drilling down, including high pressure water, sand and chemicals to release oil and gas. If you imagine a Christmas pudding with bits of fruit in it, it's much more dispersed. But the latest definition, which was in the Infrastructure Act, which was about 2008, only refers to the amount of water used. And the scientists are very critical of what it's not scientifically based. So whenever you see the government saying we have scientifically based policies, you know what you can say. So this is just showing you. This is if you go into like on the right, if you just go into a pool, you can get conventional oil or gas. It's there, it's in a great pool, you can get at it. On the middle, if you go into what's called tight oil or gas, it's spread about in the shale and it's dispersed. So you've got to use methods to drive it to the surface. That's what's involved in the fracking or acidization. So here it comes. You've got a horizontal well, you apply the pressure. This is the hydraulic fracturing, or known as fracking, and the tube is perforated, and so it can drive out under great pressure water, sand and chemicals. Okay, and then that drives the gas or oil to come out. This is the same idea, but it shows you that it also involves a lot of other things on the surface, a lot of infrastructure. There is a research project being undertaken by NERC, which is rolled out this year, to look at what's happening underground. So we seem to be doing these things in the reverse order. Let's get stuck in and then do the research to find out what's actually involved. Okay. Wells. Now, in an ordinary vertical well, it's the quality of the cemental. There's a rather graphic image by Anthony Graffiet, who is an engineer in America, and it shows the water and the chemicals coming back up the outside of the well because the cement job wasn't strong enough. You get 8% failing in 6 months, 50% in 15 years, and all fail within 30 years. That represents a threat to our water supplies, and particularly in our area, the Weald, it's very faulted. So what looks like a simple plan that I showed you as an outline is fine in America, where the underground isn't so fractured or so folded, or the geology is not so difficult. Here, we're faced with more difficult things. So well failure, injection wells are 2 to 3 times more likely to leak than conventional wells, and wells drilled horizontally have a failure rate of 4 times vertical wells. So the radioactive aspects, they bring to the surface. Even if you just put plain water down, it would come back up with other things in it. But the fact that you're putting chemicals and other substances down brings up radioactive substances. They're generated in produced water, as I'll come on to that, sludges, and within the pipelines. And methane gas is contaminated with radon, and you can't separate them. This is Ian's part of the presentation, and we've got thorium and uranium to take into account. So within the decay chains, you have particularly, as you'll be aware, the arrows going at that angle are alpha particles. So all the time you'll make it more risky because you're bringing the substances that are underground to the surface. So there's an extra 25 radionuclides. The activity's increased 14-fold. The most relevant are radium, radon and polonium. They're the most toxic, radon and radium, and need to be attended to. It just gives you the figures on what happens within the oil and gas wells. Radon and radium levels in water. That'll be on the thing I send around. So the current main producers are as shown on the map. Oh, that's disappointing. There's more disposal sites than that, but not many. There's about 5, okay, and they're mostly concentrated in northern England. And it was the Environment Agency pointed out to me that actually there are no facilities in southern England. So whenever I write in on an application, I say, and where is it going to be taken to a suitable disposal facility. It's never named, it's never said how far away it is, it's never named what they're doing. So we don't know yet. I'll just give you a taster on this. There's the different types of water. There's the flowback that comes back up when you take the pressure off. Produced water is both the wastewater coming from the well after production. So you've got an exploration well, you might then move to production. Currently in Britain, we had one exploration well at Priest Hall in Cumbria, which resulted in some seismic activity. It broke the pavement in Preston, did various other things. The government called a halt, did a year's examination, produced a sort of traffic light system. If you get a little bit, that's all right. If you get a bit more, well, think about it. And if you get a lot, that's a red light, okay? So it is associated with, well, this has disappeared, okay? The important thing is that research has been done. There was a big seminar with 50 top European, UK and American scientists met in Arlington, and they came up with 140 questions need to be answered on fracking. Should we wait and examine these questions and do the research? No, let's get in there. And it particularly think that the wastewater could make shale gas or oil exploration uneconomic in the UK. So I'm going to go through these a bit quickly. Oops, I'll go back there. In America, they do allow deep well injection. So you've done a well, you've got this untreated wastewater, where you're going to put it. In America, they put it back down the well. Here, that's not permitted. yet, but you can see little phrases creeping into the Environment Agency advice. And here you'll be aware that Oklahoma has become quite renowned for the number of earthquakes it's now getting. So this is both natural and induced quakes. That's Oklahoma. And just this year, just before, about 2 weeks ago, we've now gone from 907 movements, it's gone up by 4,000%. Now in this country, it took 6 months for Quadrilla, the company involved with Pre-Salt, to admit that their fracking exploration might have had anything to do with the earth movements, seismic movements in Blackpool. So there are various ways you can deal with this wastewater, and that's what happens to the pipes. This isn't quite on the same level as the Portuguese lung, okay, but it's similar in terms of what sludge and scale you've got to deal with.
And that becomes radioactive if you've got radioactive elements there.
Yeah, this is a centre in the States where they're trying to go for zero tolerance, but they haven't got there yet. John would argue, do we need a wastewater policy in the UK? I think we don't need more fossil fuel, and we need it to stay in the ground, and it's more difficult to get at. Well, as the economic return is less, and in the States they've got a $260 trillion dollar deficit on fracking. No one's yet earned any money from fracking. You wouldn't think that from how it's reflected. So the acknowledgements are John Busby and Ian Fairlie and Colin Mackie and the Matt cartoon.
That's really good.
When you do horizontal drilling, it's like the end of your drinking through a straw. You know that, and it can't get more than just the area around it. So then you go for putting in another drill, and then you go for putting in another drill. In other words, the wheels, which is something that could become industrial. So I'm sorry to whack through that. There is in your pack the relative information. If you've got any issues, just get
Are
back
you
to
going
me.
to send it around by email? Because
I will
know
send it.
other groups that might,
I will send it, and then you can use it.
Yeah.
John's very open, and I want to produce a leaflet, not just about acidisation, but about the wastewater issues, because it is an Achilles heel, so to speak. So, apologies for rapping through, but that was it.
Very good.
Well, you can catch up on the bits I didn't talk about in it.
Jill,
Okay.
one
Hello.
of the things is that isn't the government making fracking or proposing fracking to be a nationally significant infrastructure
Yes,
project,
they have-
which takes the authorisation away from local councils
Yeah.
to the government?
They have proposed that. That's still under consultation. Ironically, we had a consultation that closed in May about the National Planning Policy Framework, which governs all planning decisions. We had the committee, one of the parliamentary committees, considering how local authorities were facing lots of applications and how they were dealing with it, and whether the advice and the policy recommendations were helpful or not. It's not just the National Planning Policy Framework, but you've also got a whole ream of advice that goes with it. And in between that, the Minister made an announcement. So they haven't yet assessed, it was only 10 days after, they haven't yet assessed the consultation with the National Planning Policy Framework, which includes fracking, and they haven't yet heard back from the committee that's assessing it, and they make an announcement saying we're going to make permitted development, going to make it permitted. That's under consultation later this year, and your point about making it national. I remember contributing to the Hinkley Point issue, which was regarded as a national infrastructure project, and it was like sending something into thin air. You never got the full understanding of what was going on or a response to what you contributed or anything. So it is a risk that it takes away local democracy, and they've already done that in Lancashire by overriding the decision that was made by Lancashire County Council about PNR, Preston New Road, and they had a public inquiry about Rosica, which is just down the road, which are very rural lanes. You couldn't get two HGVs to pass each other, and that's yet to be determined by the planning inspector. So they've already overruled a local, well, ministers overruled a local planning decision, and in order, argument is that local authorities are holding it up and not considering them fast enough, we'll do it. And you're right, it takes democracy right away from the process. So that's still under consultation. Okay, right, lovely.